When a man loves a woman, can keep his mind.
Greetings from Castle Goring on this joyous publication date. Well, if Aurora will permit me, I am going to have to plunge right in with the view of the book. I'll tell you how long it is. I mean, it's got fairly generous size script. And it is 485 pages long. So it's quite the tome. I hope anybody who reads it will be left with no stone unturned and all questions answered. I have been very careful to be as comprehensive as I could possibly be, and to also do it in such a way that I respect all laws and all people's rights. Now, before plunging in with the main body of today's show, I am going to read out one or two questions and comments vis-a-vis this book. Okay? Fiona Howard says, "Where can we buy your books from? I've tried to find them in Waterstones and other bookstores, but cannot find them anywhere. I don't shop online." Well, I will give you the names now, and at the end of this all, I will hopefully be able to provide you with both the names and the addresses of the bookshops. There is John Sandow Books in Chelsea. There is W.H. Smith. I think you can order it from any W.H. Smith shop that sells books, and I think they all sell books, and you will be able to get it. You can order it from Foyles, and I would imagine you can also order it from Waterstones. I think you can pretty much order it from, you can also order it from Daunt's. You can order it from any bookshop in the country specifically, and they should be able to get it for you. So I hope that answers the question, Fiona Howard. Elizabeth Roberts says, "For Aussie viewers, Booktopia has Lady C's updated book on sale from the 11th of April 2024. That's Booktopia, Booktopia, like utopia or dystopia, but Booktopia. Then we have Sandstar4, who says, "I ordered Lady C's new book on Blackwell's UK. The release date is listed as the 4th of April 2024. The price listed is in US dollars and includes shipping. I've ordered from them many times before, and shipping to Texas is 10 to 14 days. That's Blackwell's UK. And finally, Nicholas Mack says, "Does anyone know when the Kindle version of Lady C's book will land on Amazon?" I gather it can be ordered now on both sides of the Atlantic, and that it is due to be delivered on I think the 16th of April, something like that. I'm afraid it's all so scatty. It's amazing. In the good old days, everything went like clockwork. Now, everything goes like a jalopy. Mm, mm, mm. Kicks and starts. GBNV says, Lady C, congratulations, big block capitals, on the launch of your new book. Thank you very much. It's actually an update of my old book, but I call it my new book as well. So let's rock and roll with new book. I have 2 questions. If you'd be good enough to answer them. First, how much of the updates is new? I'm going to answer that first before getting on to the second. A considerable amount has happened since the book was originally written, which was in 2019, and it was published in early 2020. So an awful lot has happened since then, and it is updated and included. It aims to be as comprehensive as possible while covering all the main subjects and some of the minor ones, so that it is a balanced and comprehensive book. Having said that, it takes a far firmer line than the earlier work took. Because, when people reveal themselves as they are, it doesn't behoove a writer to ignore the evidence that they have provided, for one. And second, the Express has been quoting you saying that Meghan Markle would have been the most popular person on earth if she'd stayed in the royal family and played with a straight bat. That is a fascinating observation. Could you please develop it more fully? Yeah, I suppose I can. I think it's true. I mean, Meghan is the ideal example of Heraclitus's saying, character is destiny. Had Meghan had a cooperative character, had Meghan not been so arrogant, had Meghan not been so really, quite frankly, up her own you-know-what to such an extent that she's trying to reach breakfast before it's even been consumed, had she been as cooperative, apparently, and I use the word apparently because her cooperation was always a lot more apparent than real, but had she been as apparently cooperative within the royal family as she was with the producers of Suits, she would have been faking it the way she faked so much. And she would not have. But what happened is that when she got together with Harry and the power went to her head and the position went to her head, she just dropped the I'm nice act and started with, oh, you know who I am, I'm gonna crack that whip and you're gonna jump to my tune and you better know who's boss. I'm not here to coddle staff. I'm here to put my foot on their head and show them who's boss. And she also found every reason to be uncooperative. Now, she evidently, with Suits, was at first reasonably cooperative and always seeking to enlarge her role. Well, she didn't succeed very well, did she? Because she ended up having 2 minutes maximum per episode over the whole of the series. However, she did well enough that her role got advanced somewhat. My understanding is from people who were working with her at the time, she was hardly Pollyanna with a lot of the people with whom she had to interact. But when it suited her, she would trot out the charm. Otherwise, she was playing the, I'm so special and I've got my little clique and you've got to keep your distance because we are special and you're not. But when she wasn't doing that, she was cooperative. Had she applied the technique that made her the limited success that she was on Suits to the royal family, because also the royal machinery is very efficient. So they would have shown her to her best advantage as they did initially, before she decided she was going to be totally uncooperative because she wanted out. But had she wanted in, she would now, with the most limited of cooperativeness and the most limited of work, because she was very work shy. However, had she simply utilized those aspects of her personality which she utilized on Suits, because of her color, and it's entirely, really, well, not entirely, but largely due to the fact that she was mixed race, and everybody was embracing the fact, at least in Britain and within the Commonwealth, was embracing her mixed race identity. And because she was reasonably attractive, and because she liked clothes, had she played by the rules and not flaunted them from the word go, well, that old woman, the Queen, wants me to accompany her, and I hope she realizes that I've got to get into that car before her. I don't know who she thinks she is, because I know who I am. I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and a star of Suits, and she's just a wretched old woman and a queen. So I'm going to muscle in and get into the car before her. No, she needs to know her place, and her place is beneath me. Well, had she, from the word go, dressed accordingly, instead of flaunting at every turn the dress code, which has been created over time for various good reasons, had she been cooperative, had she treated people well, instead of treating people with the disdain and the hauteur and the arrogance and the impertinence that she treated people, with the barest of effort, because of her being an American, because she was a woman of color, and because she was reasonably attractive, had she used those assets by playing with a straight bat is a very good way of putting it. Had she employed basic decency, basic cooperativeness, you're supposed to wear a hat, wear a hat. Don't have the locks of all those Turkish virgins flying all about the place as you have your tendrils a la Medusa. And always in inappropriate clothing, always. and always flaunting herself and always pushing in first. I mean, the total lack of good manners, just awful. Had she had a basic good manners, for instance, had she allowed Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II to enter the car before her, as any young person knows, older people should enter a car first, but of course, she's not any young person or any person. She's special. She would now be the most popular human being on earth. She only needed to be open to learning, but none of these jerks have anything to teach me. And I'm now quoting what people told me that she said. Oh, tradition, something tradition, tuck tradition, except it didn't begin with T. And on and on and on and on and on and on she went about how she was going to change everything, and she was going to update everything, and she was going to show everybody how it should be done. Well, she's shown everybody how it should be done. That's why they're on their uppers in California now. But for that, she would have been the most popular human being on earth now, because she had so many advantages. Catherine didn't have those advantages. But Catherine, through her own endeavors and her own decency and her personality and her cooperativeness, and remember how that thing made sure that she told the other thing. What's his name again? Amid scabies. She told Amid scabies that, what was Catherine called? Cooperative Kate? I can't remember. It was something, it meant cooperative. Oh, Katie Keene. She was called Katie Keene, except, of course, Katie Keene is an Americanism. It's not a British term. But she had Amid scabies on her behalf, snaring at Catherine for being keen to oblige, keen to do her duty, keen to show that she was a decent person and cared. My goodness, what condemnation that deserves. I mean, I'm a proud, confident woman of colour, and I have to tell you, I'm Shira, rebel princess, and I'm not going to have anybody telling me what to do, and certainly not some broken down 94-year-old woman. Oh, so I curtsy like a shark diving. Well, I hope that answers the question. Grafin von Grafton says, Dear Lady C, I know your new book will be coming out very soon, and that many Campbellistas are chafing at the bit to purchase a copy. That would be very nice. I've spent a lot of time on this book. It took me 10 months to update. Based on your past experience with the marvelously intelligent, completely unbiased journalists and the way many have previously treated you, are you mentally and emotionally preparing yourself in any way for your press tour? Or is this the type of situation that you are so used to that any snarkiness on their part is like water off a duck's back? Your life is so different to most of us in specificities, but all of us have difficulties and challenging situations to face and overcome. So hearing about the ways in which you deal with life's vicissitudes is always incredibly helpful. Warmest regards to you and the girls. Oh, thank you so much for that. I have an interview later with a television channel that has been arranged. It's an Australian television channel. I trust them to at least be, they don't have to be positive, but they should be impartial. And I think they have proven themselves to be in the past. So I'm going to go with them. I have done yesterday various interviews with various YouTubers, which, as we're speaking, I would imagine that some, if not all, will be airing. I mean, I've been so busy, I'm afraid I'm not really au fait with exactly what's going on. But I did several interviews yesterday, and those should be airing. And in conjunction with my publisher and agent, and one or two friends and colleagues, decided that I was going to be very careful what I did, because as one of the better informed and more experienced and more respected royal writers said to me, he said, because he's read the book, and he said, the book is fantastic. And I'm just astonished that it will not be picked up. But it won't be, because the mainstream media are so gutless and so, I'm paraphrasing him now, because I then said, and pusillanimous, really, this is what you mean, isn't it? And he agreed. They are pusillanimous because they're terrified of being sued, because Harry and Meghan have been suing them. And they're worried that if they address any of the issues seriously that need to be addressed, that even though they by law are allowed to, and owing to their profession, they are really morally obliged to. But I don't think moral obligation is something quite as high on their list as the worry that they might be sued. Harry and Meghan have the mainstream media in this country totally terrified. Totally. To such an extent that they are failing to fulfill their journalistic obligations to the public. Well, knowing that, there was one newspaper that a colleague of mine, who is somebody I respect, approached, and they declined the interview because they are worried about being sued. They didn't put it quite like that, but that's what we knew. Anyway, so let us see what happens once the YouTubers and the Australian television come out with, and they pick it up. Then they're going to be so courageous. We've followed the lead. They're so courageous. Let's be camp followers. So that's the press, and I'm sure some of them will, even though am extremely careful to show how gutless and irresponsible and negligent the press have been in covering the story as it should have been covered. And I praise them for their restraint, even though I can tell you something. I don't regard it as restraint. I regard it with contempt as nothing short of pusillanimity. I'm sure they'll find ways of hacking me, and if they don't, it will be quite the first time and quite a novel experience. But will it happen? Will they hack me? Oh, I'm pretty sure many of them will, because they don't like me. They've never liked me. They've never liked me because I wasn't from their ilk. I had all sorts of connections that they never had, so I was able to get scoops that they never could. And some of them, shall we say, the more reputable and decent ones. I mean, I have very cordial relations with some of them, and I have nothing but contempt for some of the others. But do I expect them to be nice about me? Absolutely not. Do I expect them to be fair? Why would they be? They've never been in the past, with notable exceptions. Most of them haven't. Most of them haven't. So, what can I say? Let's see. Is it water off a duck's back? I don't know that I'd say it's water off a duck's back. I'd say I have utter disdain and contempt for them. And therefore, it's not water off a duck's back. It is slime that's hosed away. Oh, I think that would be more it. And, life is tough for all of us some of the time. I do not relish unpleasantness, but if it comes my way and I know that I am in the right, I'm going to step beyond it. It's as simple as that. So I hope that answers the question. Tara Keels says, "Hi, Lady C. Okay, am I missing something? Everyone was concerned about Catherine taking time off to recuperate and not be out there for public scrutiny. But no one is concerned about the invisible Sussex children. Why is no one concerned about their well-being or trying to verify their state of health and emotional stability, having been isolated their entire lives? I don't understand. What am I not getting? Are those kids okay? How do we know? All we've seen of them has been edited photos. Thanks, dear Lady C, for continuing to be a voice of reason." Thank you. I try at all times to be sound, sane, sensible, and realistic. Shall I say, it's not only the children. Catherine announced that she was going in for an operation and how long she would be out for. And we had this baying for meat. Why is it that the mainstream media and all those wonderful, courageous journalists, some of whom I like, so I'm not going to mention any of their names, but who were jumping on the bandwagon, we want to see where Catherine is. We want proof. Why is it not one of them has said anything about the irregular way in which Meghan behaved throughout the gestational period of Archie and throughout the delivery of the child. And even down to the extraordinary and unusual and up to then unheard of, and therefore one could see irregular way in which the birth was announced. Why is it there has been no obeying for an explanation as to why Archie's birth certificate was amended? Archie, as a result of that birth certificate, went into the line of succession. Archie could end up being the monarch in this country. But not one occasion did you have one supposedly responsible journalist asking any of the questions that responsible journalists should have been asking. But a study of irresponsibility. There they were baying for Catherine's blood. As for the children being out of the public eye, well, I think in fairness to those children's father and Meghan, how they wish to bring up children that are legally theirs is entirely up to them, as long as the children are not being abused or misused. Now, you and I may think that royal children need to be prepared for royal roles, but those are not children that are being prepared for royal roles. Why? There are many possible explanations, none of which I propose to go into here. However, I will make the point that those children, Harry and Meghan, have an absolute right to keep them out of the public domain and out of public inspection if they choose to do so. The public does not have a right to those children, as it's quite obvious those children are actually beyond being royal, let me put it that way, and that they will be playing no part in royal life in the future. So Harry and Meghan have the rights of any other parent. Parents do not have an obligation to show the public that their children are being well taken care of. It so happens that their technique is counterproductive in terms of affection where the children are concerned, because I have made the point before, and I'm sure I make it in the book, that if people have no knowledge of children, they have no affection for those children. You only develop affection for children that you know. And if people don't know them, and they are going to have no affection for them. And if Meghan thinks that she's going to drop him at some big surprise and everyone's going to, oh, how wonderful, Prince Archie, Princess Lilibet, as if they were two characters in a down-market soap opera from the 1970s. They don't even have proper names. They have nicknames. I ask you. But that's their choice. That's their right. They are fully entitled to withhold those children. And the fact of the matter is, the public have no right to them, and the press are remarkably silent on anything that would require an explanation from Meghan and Harry. Why? A part of it again goes back to the fact that Meghan and Harry played the colour card very early in the game, and everyone is terrified in this country of anybody being accused of anything to do with colour. They are supreme intimidators, and they have intimidated the press. And the press, like all bullies, are gutless. I know, they've certainly bullied me, and they've certainly shown me how gutless they are. And quite frankly, I have nothing but contempt for most of them. So I hope that answers the question, because it's also very easy to hold your nose and walk past the stench that emanates from them, because they may serve a useful purpose by being a free press in protecting the citizens' interests against the politicians. But otherwise, such a stink. Jennifer Cooper says, I think if you surveyed the general public, you would find the main issue behind the hysteria of what has happened to Catherine is that we are all terrified those two misfits would end up wheedling their way into top positions in the family. Jennifer Cooper, I think you have a point. My understanding is that nobody wants Harry and Meghan around. Nobody. And the idea that they would come back here, swan around, and try to grandstand us. Oh, look how wonderful I am. I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and classy with a capital K. Yeah, and I'm so demure when I'm not admitting I'm a fraud. But I don't think that is entirely why there was the hysteria. I think there was the hysteria because mass moves into vacuum, and there was a void created by Catherine's absence. And then you had all sorts of stories washing over from the dung heap in California onto these shores about potentialities, let's put it that way. And you had all sorts of dis and misinformation, as you still do, because there was a void. But some of this was being stoked and stirred up by people from California. I think a bit of it was that nobody wants Meghan and Harry around, but I think the large part of it was a backhanded compliment to Catherine, that people are genuinely intrigued by her and genuinely fond of her, because she has shown herself to be everything that Meghan Markle has shown herself to be not. And had Meghan Markle even taken 2 leaves out of Catherine's 475-page book, she would have been right up there with Catherine, because remember, in the early days she was, and she had a tremendous advantage. She was a foreigner, and she was a proud, confident woman of colour, who, of course, hated the fact that the British press called her black. I'm not black. Black. Look at my scalp. It's wider than it is. Joyce Hayward says, Lady C, we keep hearing that the Markles are running out of money, but apparently he is worth around 48 million. So, do we actually know what the situation is? I have explained this before, Joyce Hayward. Harry and Meghan's lifestyle requires a capital sum of at least $500 million. They don't have it. If you have $48 million, you're doing very well if you can live on an income of $3 million. That's being generous. They're living way beyond their means. You can, if you are asset rich and cash poor, you need to be very careful how you manage your finances. Otherwise, you will go into debt, and debts have to be repaid. The income is very important. Not only capital, income is important. You need to have a sufficiently healthy income. It's like a field. A field needs to be irrigated by a constantly flowing river. If it's not, if it's too much and too little, it creates havoc with the crops. When you have 48 million pounds, and I don't know where you got that figure from, but I would have thought it was more in terms of dollars. But whatever, let's just say you're right. A total worth of 48 million pounds. Figure it out. Their house is on a hefty mortgage. That alone, they don't even own their house outright. Their house is 4/5 in hock to the bank. They don't even own their house properly. She goes everywhere, as the Jamaicans would say, with her bangarang, saddled down with really cheap-looking, expensive trinkets that, quite frankly, I wouldn't condescend to wear at all. But she thinks they're classy because they are Cartier. They're whoever else, because some of the brands I've never heard of. And, they're perfectly pretty, nice things for young girls to wear. And she's not a young girl. But are they worth the money that she spends? But I certainly wouldn't be stupid enough to buy any of them. Let me put it that way. And as for the clothes that she sachets around in, please. Mandy Morning says, we have just encountered a young woman who has recently become attached to our family, and in a very short period of time, she has caused immense havoc to the point where no one wants her around. She is very judgmental and very critical of everyone and everything except herself, of course. She is the epitome of everything that is right and everyone else is wrong. There may be trouble ahead, but we are in a better position than we would otherwise have been had Lady C not enlightened us as to how such people operate. Mandy Morning, you have no idea what it means to me to hear you say that. If I can open up people's eyes to the suffering that category of individual unleashes on the innocent, I will have succeeded very well. And thank you very much. And I'm going to give you one tip above all else. People like that, The best technique is avoidance. Avoid, avoid, avoid. And if you can't, starve them of any supply that they would require. Be as neutral as possible and keep within your boundaries and keep your interactions with them as non-existent as possible. Of course, it depends on the situation, but we've all been there, I think, with people who loved ones of ours were associating with who were unsuitable. I believe in bringing Siberia into the drawing room. I am as cold as ice. Best way to be. Cruisinid says, Meghan Markle pushed for no gender for her kids in school. Why do her kids have princess and prince titles? They are based on gender. Well, again, quite frankly, I do not condemn any parent for trying to get the best thing that they can for a child. Of course, there are certain situations where what is the best thing? And certainly this would be typical of Meghan's inconsistencies, that she on the one hand says X and on the other hand does Y. So, but let us give her the benefit of the doubt. Let's bend over backwards. Maybe the children are called Archie Sussex and Lili Sussex or Lilibet Sussex at school. No anything else. But if they're being gender neutral, why weren't they called Robin and some other unisex name? Robin and Evelyn, for instance. Why weren't they called that? No, better still. Robin and Leslie. Why weren't they called Robin and Leslie? Archie is clearly named after Archie the comic strip character or Archie Bunker, or maybe a combination of the two, because remember, his mummy is really classy and she knows class when she sees it. And Lilibet was named after the head of a racist family, a family that she deplores, a family that tormented her, and she named her child not Doria or Doris or whatever the name should be. She named her Lilibet after the head of a family that she deplores as being racist and went out of her way to damage. And she named her after Harry's grandmother, notwithstanding the fact that she and he went out of their ways to ruin the last years of this poor woman's life. So much for consistency. The vocal crone says, just a reminder, politicians always accommodate the demands of a loud minority. People need to unite and protest loudly. The use of police sounds awfully like martial law. No freedom even at home. This is going to have an unhappy ending. This is an allusion to Hamza Yousuf's anti-free speech law in Scotland, where you can be arrested in your own home for saying something to somebody that they decide is hateful, even if you are in your own bed speaking to someone beside you. That's how extreme it is. The Stasi is here and alive and kicking no longer in East Germany, in Scotland. And yes, it is a vocal minority. And I'll tell you better. Hamza Yousuf has said that one of his motivating factors for doing this was so there would be no hate against Muslims. Well, the Muslim population in Scotland is very small, although I noticed that he is supposed to have complained about that there are too many white people in Scotland. Does he complain about the fact there are too many brown people in Pakistan, which is whence his family originated? I don't think he does that. So why is he doing the opposite? I think it's race baiting and the encroachment of our civil liberties in the worst way. And it's only going to have a negative effect. Because if people are forced into disharmony, don't be surprised when you get conflict. The whole thing is an outrage, and I would hope that that law is repealed sooner rather than later. But let us see if it is, because it seems as if we are living in a decadent society that is breaking down all of our general civil liberties while creating blocks within the society which are going to ultimately collide with each other. I think it's awful. I really do. I think the whole thing stinks to high heaven. And we will end with what Louise Brislin says. What I thought when I saw the video of William and Catherine coming from the local shops was the fact that none of the locals seemed to be excited enough to gawk at the couple, or were all snapping their phones, but basically ignored them and allowed them to be just like any other local in the area. So good to see. Yes, and that is what happens in local communities, especially in out-of-town places, in local communities where public figures are out and about. They, and I say they being one of them because I now speak from experience, an awful lot of the people here locally know that I function and am all around the place. And when I first came out of the jungle, everybody wanted a selfie. Now, if something happens, people will come up and say, but otherwise they leave me alone. I'm a part of the furniture, which is great. I mean, if something happens, that's a different matter. And with William and Catherine and people of their ilk, the public who know them studiedly ignore them so that they are treated just like anyone else. It is a testament to the way they have integrated. And you notice none of the instructions that Harry and Meghan had to deliver to everybody. Nobody's allowed to pat the dogs. Nobody's allowed to speak to the dogs. Nobody's allowed to greet the dogs. If the dogs jump up, they mustn't touch the dogs. Nobody's allowed to greet them. Nobody's allowed to look them in the eye. Nobody's allowed to look in their direction. No, no, no. Harry and Meghan are going to tell everybody how they are to draw a breath. William and Catherine do none of that. Now, do we see why Catherine and William are so popular and Harry and Meghan are so deplored? And on that note, I would say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. And feel free to ask any questions you'd like about the book. Okay? If you're so interested. If you're not, that's fine too. Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.